Okay, I never thought I'd be the guy posting here, but here we are. I'm 32, my wife is 30. We were together for almost 8 years, married for 5. From the outside, we looked fine: jobs, a rented apartment, vague future plans, jokes about maybe getting a dog someday. I genuinely thought we had a normal marriage. Not perfect, but real. The first cracks didn't come with a bang. They came quietly. Annoyingly. My wife started getting sharp with me, not just tired or stressed, but hostile. She'd snap over small things, twist my words, then swear I was imagining it. Lies? Back then, I didn't think so. I told myself it was just pressure, just a phase. She started staying late at work more often. Her phone was always face down. One day she changed her password out of nowhere and brushed it off like it was nothing. When I asked where she'd been, the story would shift, first, with coworkers, then, I already told you I was alone, and sometimes, what are you talking about? I told you this yesterday. At some point, I actually started questioning my own memory. The worst part was the gut feeling. That heavy, sinking sensation where everything looks fine on the surface, but something inside you keeps whispering, this isn't right. I kept telling myself, don't be paranoid. You're married. People don't just cheat for no reason. Spoiler, they do. And at that point, I had no idea how fast everything was about to completely fall apart. Looking back now, this is the part where I hate myself a little. Because the signs weren't subtle. I just worked really hard to explain them away. She stopped touching me. Not in a dramatic, obvious way, just enough that it slowly disappeared. Hugs felt rushed. Kisses turned into quick pecks on the cheek. Sex became later, then tomorrow, then somehow just not a thing anymore. When I brought it up, she snapped that I was only thinking with my body and accused me of pressuring her. That shut me up fast. Then came the lies. Small ones at first. I'd hear her on the phone laughing in the other room, and when I walked in, she'd hang up instantly and say it was nobody. I once saw a name pop up on her screen I didn't recognize. When I asked who it was, she rolled her eyes and said, "Why are you interrogating me?" The name disappeared from her messages the next day. Her schedule made no sense. Late nights followed by sudden early mornings. Weekends where she was too exhausted to spend time with me but somehow had energy to go out with friends. If I questioned it, she flipped it back on me, said I was controlling, insecure, emotionally draining. After enough of that, you stop asking. The most messed up part? I started adjusting myself around her moods. Watching my words. Walking on eggshells. Trying to be calmer, nicer, quieter, like if I could just be better, she'd stop being so distant. I genuinely believed the distance was my fault. That's what constant gaslighting does. It doesn't just make you doubt your partner, it makes you doubt yourself. And I still had no concrete proof. Just a growing sense that the person sleeping next to me wasn't fully there anymore. At the time, I told myself every marriage goes through rough patches. I didn't know this wasn't a rough patch. It was the setup. The discovery didn't happen the way you imagine it will. No dramatic confrontation, no phone blowing up with explicit messages right in front of me. It was quieter than that. And somehow, that made it worse. She left her laptop open one night. That alone was rare. She guarded her devices like they contained state secrets. I wasn't snooping at first. I swear. I just went to plug in the charger. But then a notification popped up in the corner of the screen. A chat window. A name I didn't recognize. And a message that said, "I miss how you looked at me today." That line hit me like a punch to the chest. I froze. I remember my hands actually shaking. My brain tried to come up with innocent explanations at lightning speed. Coworker? Joke? Misunderstanding? But my gut already knew. That same gut feeling I'd been ignoring for months was suddenly screaming. I clicked the chat. I know some people will judge me for that. I honestly don't care. Once trust is gone, privacy is already dead. What I saw wasn't graphic. No explicit photos. No sexting cliches. And somehow, that made it more intimate. Inside jokes. Compliments. Late-night messages. Little emotional check-ins that I hadn't been getting from her in a long time. It was an emotional affair, at the very least. Maybe more, I still didn't know yet. Then I saw the timestamps. Messages sent during the late work nights. Replies during weekends she claimed she was asleep. Plans that sounded suspiciously like inside knowledge of her schedule. My stomach dropped. Hard. I closed the laptop like it had burned me. I sat there in the dark, listening to her breathe in the bedroom, realizing that the person I trusted most had been living a second life right next to me. The worst part wasn't the messages themselves. It was the clarity. All the confusion, all the self-doubt, it suddenly made sense. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't insecure. I wasn't imagining things. I was being lied to. And from that moment on, there was no going back to ignorance. I didn't confront her right away. I thought I would, imagined myself calm, controlled, asking the right questions. Instead, I spent 2 days walking around like a ghost, replaying everything I'd seen, wondering if I was still missing something. On the second night, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I asked her, as casually as I could, who his name was. She didn't even hesitate. Not a pause, not a blink. Who? She said, genuinely annoyed. Like I'd asked something stupid. My heart started racing. I told her I saw the messages. Her face changed instantly, not guilt, not fear. Anger. Sharp, defensive anger. She accused me of invading her privacy, of being paranoid, of looking for reasons to be unhappy. Classic deflection. Then the story started shifting. First, he was just a coworker. Then he was someone who understands her better than I do. Then suddenly I was the reason she needed someone to talk to, because I was emotionally unavailable. I asked if she'd cheated on me. She laughed. Actually laughed. Said I was being dramatic and that if she had cheated, would have pushed her to it anyway. That sentence still makes my stomach twist. When I asked to see her phone, she refused. Said trust doesn't work that way. Said I should either believe her or admit I never trusted her at all. Meanwhile, she deleted the chat in front of me and told me it was for my own peace. I felt like I was arguing with someone who had rehearsed this moment. Every question I asked came with a counterattack. Every emotion I showed was used against me. By the end of the conversation, I was apologizing, not for snooping, but for bringing it up at all. That night, she slept peacefully. I didn't sleep at all. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't the full truth. It was just the version she thought I'd accept. After that first confrontation, something shifted. Not in a healing way, in a countdown way. She became weirdly calm, almost smug. Like she thought she'd handled it, wrapped it up, controlled the narrative. I tried to act normal. I really did. But once trust breaks, your brain turns into a detective you never asked for. I noticed everything. She started guarding her phone even harder. Took it into the shower. Slept with it under her pillow. If a notification buzzed, she'd flip the screen down so fast it was almost comical. When I asked her who she was texting, she'd sigh dramatically and say, "Why are you like this now?" Then came the slip. One evening, she mentioned she was going out with a friend from work, same wording as always. I nodded, didn't push. But an hour later, she texted me asking if I was still awake because she'd left her charger at his place. His place. Not their office. Not a cafe. His place. I stared at the screen for a long time before responding. When I asked whose place she meant, she went silent. No typing bubbles. No excuses. Just silence. Then, 15 minutes later, I meant a coworker's place. Stop overreacting. But the damage was done. You don't accidentally say something that's specific unless it's already normal to you. When she got home that night, she smelled different. Not perfume, soap. Like she'd showered somewhere else. When I pointed it out, she snapped that I was being creepy and paranoid again. Said she was tired of living under interrogation. That was the moment it hit me. This wasn't just emotional anymore. This wasn't just texts and validation and late nights. She had crossed a line, maybe many lines, and she was so deep in it that the lies were starting to overlap. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just felt this cold, heavy certainty settle in my chest. She was cheating on me. And she thought she was getting away with it. I wish I could say I handled the next part with dignity. I didn't. I went looking for proof. Not because I wanted to hurt myself, but because I needed something solid, something she couldn't talk her way out of. A few days later, she left her phone on the kitchen counter when she went to shower. That almost never happened. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I told myself I'd just check the lock screen. Just to see. There were messages. A lot of them. Same name. Different app. I opened the chat. This time, there was no room for interpretation. Plans to meet. Jokes about how close they'd gotten. A message from him saying he couldn't wait to have her all to himself again. And her reply, soon. Just need to keep things calm at home. At home. I felt sick. Like actually nauseous. I had to sit down on the floor because my legs wouldn't hold me up. That single sentence erased every excuse she'd given me. Every accusation that I was paranoid. Every time she'd made me feel crazy. She knew exactly what she was doing. I took screenshots. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. Part of me hated myself for crossing that line. Another part knew I'd never forgive myself if I didn't. When she came out of the shower, wrapped in a towel, humming like nothing in the world was wrong, I realized something terrifyingly clear. She could lie straight to my face and then act normal 5 minutes later. That night, I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed time to process the fact that my marriage hadn't just cracked, it had been hollowed out from the inside. I slept on the couch. She didn't ask why. And that hurt almost as much as the messages themselves. I didn't plan the confrontation. It just exploded out of me. The next evening, she came home late again. Dropped her keys louder than necessary, sighed like I was the exhausting part of her day. Something in me snapped. All the fear, all the self-doubt, all the nights of lying awake replaying conversations, it turned into pure anger. I asked her, straight up, if she was sleeping with him. She didn't deny it. Instead, she rolled her eyes and said, "Can we not do this right now?" That answer told me everything. I told her I'd seen the messages. I watched her face carefully, expecting panic. What I got was irritation. She said I had no right to go through her phone and that whatever I found was my fault for looking. Then the justifications came out, fast and sharp. She said she'd been unhappy for years. Said I stopped trying. Said he made her feel seen. When I asked why she hadn't talked to me instead, she laughed and said talking to me was pointless. I asked if she loved him. She shrugged. Shrugged. Like I'd asked what she wanted for dinner. That's when I yelled. I'm not proud of it, but I lost control. I told her she'd destroyed our marriage, that she was cruel, that lying like this was emotional abuse. She fired back that I was dramatic, that people cheat all the time, and that I should get over myself. Then she said something I'll never forget. If you were a better husband, this wouldn't have happened. In that moment, I realized I wasn't talking to my wife anymore. I was talking to someone who had rewritten our entire history to excuse what she'd done. And no amount of explaining, pleading, or understanding was going to reach her. Because she didn't feel guilty. She felt justified. After that fight, everything inside me collapsed at once. The anger burned out fast, and what replaced it was worse, emptiness. I went through the motions like a machine. Went to work. Answered emails. Nodded at people. Meanwhile, my chest felt hollow, like someone had scooped something vital out of me and left nothing behind. I started replaying our entire relationship in my head. Every argument. Every moment she'd called me too sensitive or said I was imagining things. I wondered how long she'd been lying. How many times she'd kissed me after being with him. How many memories I thought were real were actually built on deception. Sleep became a joke. When I did manage to fall asleep, I'd wake up with my heart racing, convinced I'd heard her phone buzz. I stopped eating properly. Lost weight without trying. People at work asked if I was okay, and I lied. Apparently I'd learned from the best. She, on the other hand, seemed lighter. Happier. She'd hum while making coffee. Scroll through her phone with a little smile she never used to have around me. That contrast messed with my head more than the cheating itself. It felt like I was grieving alone while she'd already moved on. At one point, I seriously wondered if I deserved this. If I really had failed her somehow. Gaslighting does that, it crawls into your brain and starts speaking in your own voice. Then one night, sitting alone on the couch at 3 a.m., it finally hit me. Even if she ended the affair tomorrow, even if she begged, even if she swore she'd change, I would never feel safe with her again. And realizing that was devastating. Because it meant I wasn't just losing my wife. I was losing the future I thought we were building. Clarity doesn't arrive gently. It hits you when you're already exhausted. A few days after that realization, I asked her one last time if she was willing to cut contact with him. Not as an ultimatum. Not as a threat. Just a question. I needed to know if there was anything left to fight for. She didn't answer right away. She sighed, sat down, and said she didn't like being controlled. Said she wasn't sure she wanted to give up someone who made her feel good just to keep a marriage that felt heavy. Heavy. Like I was a chore. That was it. Something inside me went quiet. Not numb, calm. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't confused. I wasn't angry. I wasn't trying to decode her words or read between the lines. She was choosing him. Or at least, she was choosing herself over us. I told her I couldn't live like this anymore, checking phones, doubting reality, feeling disposable in my own marriage. She accused me of giving up too easily. Said I was throwing everything away over one mistake. One mistake doesn't involve weeks of lies, manipulation, and blame shifting. I packed a bag that night. Just the basics. Clothes, charger, documents. As I zipped it up, she asked where I was going, like she was genuinely surprised. That hurt more than anything she'd said so far. I told her I needed space. She nodded and said, "Do what you need to do. No tears. No panic. No fight." And as I walked out the door, it finally sank in. I wasn't abandoning my marriage. I was leaving something that had already let me go. I stayed with a friend at first. Crashed on his couch, living out of a duffel bag like some kind of cliché. He didn't ask many questions, which I appreciated. He just let me exist in that half-broken, half-numb state. Being away from her changed everything. The constant tension was gone. No more waiting for the next lie. No more analyzing her tone, her phone habits, her moods. And that's when it really hit me. I'd been living in survival mode for months without realizing it. The silence was loud, but it was honest. She texted me a few times. Not apologies, updates. Practical stuff. Bills. Mail. When I didn't respond right away, she accused me of ghosting her. The irony almost made me laugh. Then I found out, through a mutual friend, that she was already openly seeing him. Posting stories. Going out together. No attempt to hide it anymore. Apparently, once I was gone, the secret lost its purpose. That one hurt. Even though I expected it. It confirmed something important, though. She wasn't confused. She wasn't lost. She wasn't making a mistake. She'd already made her choice long before I packed that bag. One night, lying on that couch, staring at the ceiling, I realized something else too, something uncomfortable but necessary. I'd been trying to save a relationship with someone who was actively dismantling it. You can't fix that. You can't communicate your way out of it. And you definitely can't love someone into respecting you. That was the night I stopped hoping she'd come back. And started thinking about what I needed to do next. A week after I left, she called me. Not to check on me, to ask if I was planning on coming back anytime soon. No, I'm sorry. No, I miss you. Just logistics. That's when I knew. I told her I wanted a divorce. There was a pause. A long one. Then she said, "Wow. So you're really doing this?" Like I was the one detonating everything. She said I was being impulsive, that I'd regret it, that marriages go through worse. I almost laughed. Worse than sustained betrayal and emotional abuse? She asked if we could take a break instead. Keep things unofficial. No labels. No final decisions. Translation: she wanted the safety net without the responsibility. I said no. Saying that one word felt heavier than anything else I'd said in weeks. My hands were shaking. My voice almost broke. But I said it anyway. She got cold after that. Said I was being selfish. Said I'd never find anyone who'd put up with me like she did. That one stung, not because I believed it, but because I recognized it as the same tactic she'd been using for years. Fear. After we hung up, I sat there staring at my phone, waiting for the wave of regret everyone talks about. It didn't come. What came instead was grief, deep, aching grief for the life I thought I'd have. For the woman I believed she was. For the version of myself that kept trying even when it hurt. But beneath all of that was something new. Relief. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't begging someone to choose me. I was choosing myself. Grief comes in waves, not order. I thought once the decision was made, things would get easier. Cleaner. Like flipping a switch. Turns out grief doesn't work that way. It shows up whenever it feels like it, uninvited. Some days I felt okay. Functional. I'd go hours without thinking about her. I'd even catch myself laughing at dumb things, and for a split second I'd feel normal again. Then something small would hit me out of nowhere, a song we used to play in the car, a restaurant we liked, a stupid inside joke, and it was like someone punched the air out of my lungs. The nights were the worst. I kept replaying the good memories, which felt unfair. Why did those survive when the bad ones were the truth? I missed the version of her that felt safe. Or maybe I missed who I thought she was. That distinction mattered more than I wanted to admit. She reached out again during this time. Not to reconcile, to reminisce. Sent me old photos. Said things like, we did have some good times, didn't we? It messed with my head more than anger ever did. Nostalgia is a dangerous drug when you're already hurting. I told her to stop. That boundary was hard. It felt cruel, even though it wasn't. I realized that healing meant letting the wound close, not reopening it just to check if it still hurt. Slowly, I started noticing changes in myself. I wasn't constantly anxious anymore. I wasn't doubting my reality. My thoughts felt clearer, quieter. Like my brain had finally stepped out of a room full of noise. That's when it hit me. If losing someone brings you peace, then what you had wasn't love anymore. It was survival. And I was done surviving. There's a weird, disorienting phase that comes after the worst of the pain. When you're not actively breaking down anymore, but you're also not okay. You just exist. And you realize how much of yourself got folded into someone else. I didn't know what to do with my free time at first. Every habit I had revolved around us. Even the way I planned my evenings. I kept reaching for my phone to tell her something out of reflex, then remembering there was no her to tell anymore. That hurt in a quieter, more embarrassing way. So I started small. I went to the gym again, not for revenge or a glow-up, just to feel something physical that wasn't anxiety. I cooked meals she used to hate. I stayed out late without explaining myself to anyone. The freedom felt wrong at first, like I was doing something I'd get in trouble for. Then it started to feel good. I also started unpacking things I'd ignored for years. How often I'd apologize just to keep the peace. How often I'd swallowed my feelings because they were too much. How I'd confused loyalty with self-erasure. That part was uncomfortable. You can't grow without admitting where you shrank yourself. One night, it hit me that I wasn't actually lonely. I was unfamiliar to myself. And that realization was scary, but also kind of exciting. Because for the first time in a long while, my life wasn't being shaped around someone else's lies or moods. It was mine again. And I was finally starting to remember what that felt like. Distance has a way of sharpening hindsight. Things that felt confusing inside the relationship look painfully obvious once you're out of it. I wish I'd known that love doesn't require you to constantly prove your reality. That if someone makes you feel crazy for asking reasonable questions, the problem isn't your insecurity, it's their dishonesty. I wish I'd understood that being understanding isn't the same as being endlessly forgiving. I let too many red flags slide because I didn't want to be the bad guy. I thought patience would be rewarded. Instead, it was exploited. I also wish I'd known that cheaters don't just lie about the affair, they lie about you. About your role, your flaws, your supposed failures. Not because it's true, but because it makes their choices easier to live with. The hardest lesson was this. You can love someone deeply and still need to walk away. Love isn't enough when respect is gone. History isn't enough when trust is broken. And time invested isn't a reason to keep investing when the return is pain. If you're reading this and something feels off in your relationship, pay attention to that feeling. Don't silence it just to keep the peace. Peace that costs you your sanity isn't peace at all. I learned that too late. But at least I learned it. Final thoughts and advice. If there's one thing this experience stripped away, it's my illusions. About marriage. About loyalty. About how much love alone can carry when honesty disappears. I used to think walking away meant failure. That staying, enduring, and working through it was always the stronger choice. I don't believe that anymore. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stop participating in something that's breaking you. Here's what I'd tell anyone who sees themselves in any part of this. If your partner lies easily and often, believe the pattern, not the apologies. If you feel like you're constantly confused, anxious, or doubting your memory, that's not normal conflict, that's manipulation. If they blame you for their betrayal, they're not taking responsibility. They're protecting their ego. And most importantly, you don't need undeniable proof to leave. Feeling unsafe, unloved, or disrespected is enough. I'm not over it. I probably won't be for a while. But I'm healing, and I'm doing it without having to beg someone to tell me the truth. If you're stuck in a situation like this and wondering whether you're strong enough to leave, you are. You just don't know it yet.